reminders, we are recording the session. If you don't want to be part of that recording, please switch your camera off. Otherwise, you're welcome to keep it on and keep yourself on mute unless you want to speak. My name is Liz Dunn. I am the Safeguarding Learning Project Development Officer for the Safeguarding Children's Partnerships across Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. Now, if you don't know what some of that means, that's absolutely fine, because throughout this session this morning, we'll explain what the Safeguarding Children's Partnership is, and we'll explain the role and how the voluntary and community sector fits into that, along with the statutory sector. Okay, so I'm also going to introduce, I'll ask my colleagues that I'm delivering the session with to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with James.
Thank you, Liz. I'm James Fox. I'm the manager of the Safeguarding Children Partnership for Leicestershire and Rutland.
And then Claire.
I'm Claire Fillingham. I work at the Bridges Midlands, and I'm here today as chair of the Safeguarding Children Partnership Voluntary and Community Sector Reference Group.
Thank you. And Anna.
Hello, I'm Anna Maudsley from Leicester YMCA, and I'm here as Vice Chair for the VCS Reference Group.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Right, so what is this Festival of Learning all about? We're very excited. It's a whole new way of work. It's a whole venture that we've never done before. So we've got 2 whole weeks of learning, and it's being presented by the Leicestershire Safeguarding Children's Partnership Board and the Leicestershire and Rutland Safeguarding Children's Partnership. Hopefully you'll have received the programme, and I hope you can navigate around it. If you don't really understand how it's working, myself and Daria, and I'm going to ask Daria to introduce herself now.
Hello, I work with Liz for the delivery of the training and this festival. My name is Daria Clark. Nice to meet you.
So Daria is my very glamorous assistant, and we work together. And if you need some support in joining some of the sessions, you know, that's what we want to do. We want to help you to access as many of the sessions as you can, or you're able to. Appreciate that you're at work, and you know there's time limitations on you as participants. And you'll notice that some sessions are free for you to just join through the link, but others you've had to register for, and because the numbers are limited. So again, we can help you to join those sessions should you wish to join them, and if they're not full already. And what we're planning to do is each day send out the programme in an email for the next day. Now, I'm hoping this won't fill up your inboxes too much, but we're going to title that each day with the date. So you should have had one yesterday, which you received this morning in your inbox, saying Monday the 13th of Sept, FOL, which is obviously we love acronyms when we're in sort of in certain roles. So for Festival of Learning, FOL, and then the programme for that day. So you'll get one every day. If you can't join any, feel free to delete that, and you've got the full programme that you can refer to anyway should anything change. So that's how we're hoping that this fortnight will proceed. We will try to evaluate all the sessions, and we will also record some of them, not all of them. Some of them you'll be made aware at the beginning of each session whether it's being recorded or not, and that's to try and maximise the learning, because you know if there are people who can't attend certain sessions or would like to know about certain things but aren't available on that day, then it's just to maximise the learning as much as we possibly can. Okay, I think that's everything I need to say about that. Also, I need to explain how it's come about. So it started pre-COVID, as a lot of things do, where we Claire came to me and said that she thought that we ought to do something for the voluntary community sector. Sometimes they don't feel included in some of the learning that we're delivering, and that, you know, as a sector, it's a massive sector, really important in terms of safeguarding, and perhaps we should do something specifically for them. So we had started to sort of prepare something pre-COVID, perhaps hadn't shared it well enough, and so that was put on hold. And then Claire came to me again and said, you know, we still would like something like this, Liz. At the same time, Michelle Kelly approached me from Health and said, Liz, did you know there's a Child Protection Week in September? Maybe we should do some events during Child Protection Week, because in health, a lot of people don't understand, perhaps, you know, early help, where early help starts and stops, and where children's social care fits into early help. So I thought, oh, well, perhaps we can merge these two together, because in terms of early help, the voluntary and community sector plays a massive part in that part of safeguarding. So perhaps we can merge them together. So that's what we decided to do. We did then find out that the Child Protection Week in September is actually an American one, so we've just moved this to be more convenient to ourselves. So we've got this merged, so we've got lots of people involved in delivering this 2 weeks of training. And when I talk about early help and accessing services and services that are available, this is a key sort of diagram that you perhaps could familiarise yourself with. This is in the threshold to access to services, for access to services, which is on both of the safeguarding partners' websites, because it's the same document. So it's the same document used across LLR, and this explains how you can access services. So if we look at this, tier 1 we can see is green. So tier 1 is universal services. These are services for children. Most children grow up in universal services. So if this was diagrammatically correct, that green would go right round, probably into the sort of maroony colour, but definitely into the orange, because most children grow up in tier 1. Tier 2 is a child that might require some additional service, some additional need. So perhaps speech and language that can be managed outside of the local authority. This still is. It could be some behaviour support in school. So there's lots of additional needs that people might have that can be accessed in a range, a plethora of different services and agencies that are outside of the local authority. Still, some of them are in statutory services, so they might be in health, they might be in schools, and then a range in the voluntary sector and private and community sector. And then if we move up a little bit, we're going to tier 3. So tier 3 is perhaps a child with more complex needs, multiple needs, and they would require some targeted and enhanced support. And this is where services would work together. This is not necessarily within the local authority at this point. You still could be working together outside of the local authority, seeing what help is required, seeing how to support a child. Perhaps someone in your service is leading a team around the family sort of meeting, and this could be outside of the local authority, but it might be through, as you move up through tier 3, that you decide to gain some support from the local authority, and then you could make a referral for early help support. So all of this in tier 2 and tier 3 is classed as early help. It's helping a child and family at the point where they first need the help. And so we see that voluntary and community sectors, actually, they're in tier 1, they're in tier 2, they're in tier 3. So at tier 4, is that where we hand over to our statutory partners in the local authority? Well, it could be. It could be that you refer in to tier 4. This is requiring acute statutory intervention, children with complex and acute needs. So people would refer. It might be child protection, that key point of child protection. It's also child in need. So it's children who need some support, and then children who need child protection from a statutory agency. But what I'd say to you is as well, that a lot of our voluntary and community sector partners work with us in Tier 4 as well. So we work together. We're still working all together, working together to safeguard children, even at Tier 4. So it's not that necessarily people hand that child or family over. They're still involved. It's just that they're also accessing more specialist acute services. And if you see in the middle of the windscreen, you can see there's an arrow that goes both ways. So as people come into services, it might be that they need to go into a higher tier, or it might be that they can move into a lower tier once they've received some support. And then in the very middle, if unsure, consult. And I'll come on to that. That will be explained later throughout the whole festival in terms of how you do access services, how you access them when they're in the voluntary sector, and how you access some of the local authority services as well. We have all 3 early help sectors from the local authorities. When I say all 3, I mean Rutland, Leicester and Leicestershire, coming to tell us what services they offer and how you can access them. So that's part of what we've got on offer this week. And so if I move forward, this just to sort of outline the programme a little bit. So we have our keynote speaker on Wednesday, Wilma King, who is coming to present for us. She's got a wealth of knowledge. I've been fortunate enough to work with her myself. So I think that'll be a really interesting look at how actually, as a safeguarding community, we do work together to safeguard children, and actually how important the voluntary and community sector is within that. Like I said, we've got the local authority early help teams, we've got people from prevent services, we've got people from living without abuse, part of the domestic abuse services that we offer. We have people from ADH solutions. We have a look at some of the broader safeguarding needs in terms of, I'm going to do an overview session on the MARF. We've got people doing DSL sessions. Claire is doing a session on, actually, if you're a smaller community group, or voluntary group, how what is it that you need to do to make sure that you're safeguarding systems and processes, and that you're meeting everything that you should do in terms of safeguarding. So there's a whole wealth of different services. We're hoping to get people who sit in like at the front door of the local authorities to explain, why some referrals are accepted, why some aren't, what is it that they're looking for, how is it that you can perhaps maximise opportunities in terms of referral. But it's not all about the local authority front door, it's more about what happens before then, how can people help before then. And so we've got networking sessions that you can come along to and just perhaps pick up on some different groups that are working. We've got Centre for Fun and Families coming to one of those, and we've got the Jenkins Centre coming as well. So there's lots of different sessions. I'm really worried that I've forgotten somebody now, but if I have, that's oh, we've got health. We've got people from health coming to talk about, what happens in the hospital in terms of safeguarding, what happens in LPT. Do you know the difference between UHL and LPT? It took me a long time to understand the difference between the two, and that health isn't a sector that works. It's more than one sector within itself. So there's complications within health, like there are in other agencies, and they're different, sort of they're run in different ways. So people are coming to talk about that. So lots of opportunities on offer. Right, I'm going to stop going on. There'll be the chance to talk about some new initiatives that are coming up as well. So we have people talking about new initiatives, troubled families, children that have got parents in prison. So these are not troubled families, it's parental conflict, sorry. So there's been some work on reducing parental conflict. There's some more work coming up. So people are coming along to talk about that. We're going to know about a new initiative about children who have parents in prison, and also some of the work of the violence reduction network, which is linked to the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office. So loads and loads of stuff, and it's all linked to how we safeguard better across our services, which include the voluntary and community sector, and then how we then meet the business plan priority messages, which James is going to talk about later. So I hope I haven't confused you. I've been trying to make it clearer. I hope I haven't confused you. And I'm going to hand over to my colleague James to explain about the Safeguarding Children partnerships.
Thanks, Liz. That's great. Yeah, I hope you find these sessions, whichever ones you're able to link in with, really helpful in developing your safeguarding within your organisation and how you work with other organisations to support children with their needs, with their well-being, and to safeguard them. Before we get into, I guess, the real content of this session, thinking about VCS organisations and public sector and how they work together, I thought we'd just give a brief overview and introduction of the Safeguarding Children Partnership. And what they are and what they do, so you're understanding that if that's something you're not aware of. So as Liz has said, we've got two Safeguarding Children partnerships in the area of Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. Leicester Safeguarding Children Partnership Board that covers the area of Leicester City, and Leicestershire and Rutland Safeguarding Children Partnership that covers the counties of Leicestershire and Rutland. As their names suggest, we've got these two partnerships, but they do work really closely together and share a lot of the work, a lot of the resources they produce, and work really closely to try and have that common approach really across the two areas. The partnerships are set up to oversee multi-agency safeguarding arrangements or multi-agency arrangements for safeguarding children. So really the arrangements for how organisations work together to safeguard children, and that's very much the focus of the two partnerships. And the partnerships bring organisations together, so organisations from the public sector, has been mentioned, health, local authorities, police, probation services, and the voluntary and community sector as well, and schools, bringing those organisations together. The partnerships work to agree how we work together to safeguard children. So the partnerships will set procedures. They'll set the thresholds for support for services, as that windscreen diagram that Liz showed earlier is part of that. So they'll develop procedures and resources to help people understand or to set how we should work together, and provide guidance to support that. So the slide says we support that multi-agency working to happen through providing guidance, through providing training, such as this session, this Festival of Learning over these couple of weeks, and a wider range of training open to any organisation really who has a role in safeguarding children. And I think what we really like to do as part of that training is bring together organisations from different or people from different organisations in order to get people meeting with others. And I know that's a lot more difficult at the moment where we're doing things online, but that's something that we look at, the opportunities of how we can get people kind of meeting together, sharing together, understanding people from different organisations and how they work. So we bring organisations together as partnerships, we agree how we work together, we support that to happen, and then we test how it's working. So as partnerships, we carry out audits of cases, looking at how organisations have worked together. We'll look at performance data to see how the safeguarding system is working to keep children safe. and then we'll carry out reviews as well into serious safeguarding incidents to learn really how we can improve things, what works really well, what things we need to make changes to make safeguarding effective and working together to safeguard children effective. And then from that, what we'll do is we'll look to make improvements as a partnership. We'll look at how we can improve things, what if there's additional guidance, if we need to change slightly how we work on some of our procedures, or if we need to provide additional training or additional resource and support. So that's really an overview of the work of the partnerships that bring organisations together, agreeing how they work together, supporting that to happen, testing how it's working, and then making improvements. And that learning and improvement is really at the heart of the partnership and at the heart of safeguarding children as well. Really, it's that learning and looking at how we can learn from what we've done and look to work together further, look to improve how we work together as well. So that's the key element. And in all of that working together, the voluntary and the community sector has a key part to play in that, and a key part to play in working with public sector organisations as well with the duties they have. And so we're going to look at that more now, and I'm going to hand over to Anna, who's going to tell us a bit more about that and help us think a bit more about what that means in the voluntary sector and public sector together now.
Thanks, James. Hello, everyone. So how we in the voluntary sector can work together to safeguard children. Just a quick recap on all of the strengths that we bring as a voluntary and community sector. We are so diverse and varied. We have a really big community reach. We often employ members of the local community that have a strong drive for giving back to the community, for social justice. We frequently work with families directly and indirectly, and that might be, what I mean by indirectly is where, for instance, we might be working with one member of that family, but you can never work with one member in isolation. You always have to factor in the entire family and what the entire family's needs might be. We are lucky in that we're not seen as having power. We're free to build trust in working relationships with families, children and young people, because actually we can't compel people to do things that they might feel are against their best interests. And we often work really, really hard on developing that relationship so that, you know, people know that their engagement with us is voluntary. So, you know, actually the relationship is key with those people, and we get to know the families, children, young people in lots of different capacities. So just going on to the next slide, please. So leading on to that is our role in early help systems. The National Early Help System Guide talks a lot about the community support element, and that's where we sit. We work together to promote and develop community resources, spaces, activities, lots of local projects that collectively we develop to meet very specific needs. And because of our relationship with our families and young people, we often identify the hidden needs that aren't immediately presenting. They're not often seen as the priorities, but they underlie a lot of what else is going on. We can often find ourselves playing the role of advocate and or the navigator of services to help people to understand processes for statutory services and help them understand what is going on, but also help services understand the family's point of view as well, so that between us we have better communication. As I mentioned, we're really, really varied as a sector. You know, the emphasis is on the word sector. We cover a variety of areas, and that means we have huge and varied networks as well that we can bring into play for the people that we support. And as James has mentioned, you know, it is absolutely recognised that the voluntary community sector have an important contribution to make towards safeguarding as a result. Next, lovely. Okay, so underneath all of that, just some things that I wanted to just described to you all about, you know, the structure that we all need to employ within our organisations, regardless of the size. Claire will talk to you later for smaller voluntary community sector groups about how to develop safeguarding processes. But some of the things that will really ensure that the services that we offer in a voluntary capacity are safeguarding our clients and our staff, both from an external point of view and internally, are around safer recruitment protocols. And what that means is making sure that within the job descriptions, the people that we're attracting, you know, are really committed to keeping everybody safe and responding and knowing how to respond to something that's a concern. And that's already specified in the job descriptions, the use of the language in advertisements for jobs. When we interviewing somebody using scenario and behaviour-based questions, checking out references, so verifying that the person that has provided the reference is the person we expect to have provided that reference and can confirm their experience with that person. And following that up with supervisions and competencies. Now, I talk about competencies here because the Safeguarding Children's Partnership has some fantastic resources on their website around safeguarding competencies, which will really help us look at what are the key knowledge, skills and behaviour that we need to demonstrate and that we want our colleagues and everybody to demonstrate to show that we understand safeguarding. And then within that, it's about just having some policies and practice guidelines for identifying and responding thoroughly to safeguarding concerns. I put a sentence there to say that safeguarding threats occur through both action and inaction. And what I mean by that is that it's not just about what people do that can pose a safeguarding threat. And sometimes people do stuff that they don't realise can be compromising, but also what we don't do. So how maybe we might struggle to respond to something. We might stand back and think, oh, well, we're waiting for our colleague to do something else. In the meantime, that might bring harm to somebody, for instance. So it's not just about action, but it's also about inaction. It's about what we might not do. And so understanding where to get this information from is on our next slide. Can I have the next slide, please, Liz? Okay, so on this slide, this is where we can get all of this information from. So the local Safeguarding Children's Partnership Board websites, there is a wealth of guidance and resource packs. We're actually just releasing a number of resource packs. The first one in the series is on working with resistance. There's guidance around, as I've said before, around safeguarding competency matrices as well that we can use. There's a number of training, there's a training program, a number of free and wide-ranging training, training from basic safeguarding awareness to, as Liz is going to take you through later, the thresholds document and the multi-agency referral form, for instance, working with ADHD, understanding LADO, the role of the local authority designated officer. All of that is on there, and there's a variety of their online sessions, and there's multiple dates and times to attend. And then people to add to our networks as a voluntary and community sector, make friends with the local authority designated officers, LADO for short, and the DBS regional officer. I don't know if people know that there is actually a regional officer, and we can provide details of that, but they can offer support with making safer recruitment decisions as well, which will really support your processes there. Okay, and I think I hand over to Claire.
Lovely, thank you for that, Anna. So I'm here to talk about the Voluntary and Community Sector Reference Group. So the group is a subgroup of the Safeguarding Children Partnership, and its reach is across Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. So if we move on to the next slide. So the purpose of the group, as James has said, at the heart of the partnership, it's about continual improvement and continual learning, and the voluntary and community sector is very much a part of that. So the group itself provides an opportunity for two-way communication. So that ensures that the voluntary and community sector are up to date with emerging themes within safeguarding or key messages, key resources, and also very importantly that we can cascade any concerns or anything that's more unique that we're experiencing within the voluntary and community sector back to the Safeguarding Children Partnership. So in order to disseminate information, we do that via a mailing list. So we've got a mailing list with approximately, I think, 25 recipients on it. And then the idea is that they send key emails to their own networks and their own networks disseminate it beyond and so on. And we mapped that out within a recent meeting as a spider web diagram. And one of the challenges, as I'm sure you can appreciate, is the voluntary and community sector, as has already been alluded to today, is absolutely vast within Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. There's a lot of smaller community groups, more informal groups, groups that are just starting up, as well as larger and more established charities. There's faith-based groups as well. So we're talking about a huge sector. So it's just something to bear in mind, really, that that is one of our challenges. And how do we overcome that collectively together? Because partnership work is so central to all aspects of safeguarding, and the voluntary and community sector really is very central and pinnacle to all of that. We're going to go on to have the opportunity for all attendees to drop some comments in the chat box shortly. So maybe that's something that we can consider when we start to think about what are some of the challenges and barriers, because any suggestions or ideas to overcome some of those things are much appreciated, or to understand that better from everyone's perspective. Another thing that the group does is we produce news briefings. So I can drop a link to those briefings into the chat shortly. I've already dropped in some useful links from Anna's slide, so by all means cut and paste those links, and within your own time spend time looking at the threshold guidance document or the safeguarding competences, and start to familiarise yourselves with those supportive resources, as well as ensuring that colleagues understand how those resources can support our safeguarding practice. And the sessions throughout the fortnight will go into the use of those documents with scenarios and case studies to aid learning in much more depth as we work our way through the fortnight. But the group produce these briefings, so they're produced within the group, and we take it within turns to put safeguarding briefings together, and the briefings are signed off by the Safeguarding Children Partnership, and the partnership have given us a designated place on their website to publish those safeguarding briefings. So in terms of content for those briefings, they're very much aligned with the Safeguarding Children Partnership have a annual business plan which is published on their website, and the VCS reference group have a business plan each year which is very much aligned to the key areas of concentration within the partnership's business plan. So some of the key areas that have come up within news briefings that we've wanted to support the sector to understand better and to raise awareness and to get out key messages as widely as we can within the community. They're topics such as child criminal exploitation, concealed and denied pregnancies. We put a news briefing together on safeguarding children and young people within the pandemic. So it's very much worth going on there and having a look at some of the back copies. Another one was hoarding and safeguarding, how that relates to child and adult safeguarding. We have a terms of reference as a group, so we're very much there to support the voluntary sector and also to feed into the work of the Safeguarding Partnership. And within each meeting, we raise critical messages as well as recommendations, and we take those back to the partnership, and I'll explain a little more within another slide how we go on to do that. So if we can move on to the next slide. So in terms of membership, we've got membership from 18 different organisations. Since that slide was put together, Dear Albert and Homestart have also joined us. There's always space for more organisations, and we very much want to have a holistic representation. So we've got someone there who has expertise in terms of substance misuse, another organisation who supports families who have experienced domestic abuse, for example. So if you feel that your organisation would be interested in joining the reference group to support your own organisation's best practice, as well as supporting the voluntary and community sector more widely, then we certainly encourage that. And within a later slide, we'll talk about how you can do that. But it would be for the designated safeguarding lead or a senior member of your staff to join up to the VCS reference group. We have 4 meetings a year, so we have quarterly meetings, but there's a lot of communication between time. As I say, we've got a mailing list, so it's a great forum to raise any issues in between time and get key messages out across the sector as broadly as possible, as well as having great links with colleagues. So if we feel that there's a gap and it'd be great to have an additional training course, then as Liz said earlier, I'd pick up the phone or send Liz an email across, and we can develop support and onward practice in that way as well. We have representation from the district borough councils at each meeting, as well as a safeguarding children partnership manager from Leicestershire and Rutland and/or Leicester as well, who attend our meetings. And that really supports this very supportive and enabling free flow of information between the partnership and the voluntary and community sector representatives who form the group. And our membership is made up of long-standing members, as well as having a developing and dynamic membership. So as safeguarding practice, it ever evolves, we ensure that our membership reflects what's currently going on within our local communities. If we can move on to the next slide, please. So this is just to show you the structure of the Safeguarding Children Partnership. So you can see some of the groups that sit within that James talked about earlier within the presentation. And the VCS reference group sits there as a subgroup. So it's very much valued in terms of our voice as voluntary and community sector organisations are heard. We're strongly working in partnership with colleagues from other sectors such as the statutory and private sector, and our contributions are very much taken on board, and we're there as an equal partner. Having worked in the sector myself for more than the previous 10 years, I've seen time and time again within the voluntary and community sector how we're at the heart of early intervention opportunities, and also often the first agency that a child, family or young person works with or approaches in terms of safeguarding concerns, whether they're disclosed to us or whether that's something that we come across within the support that we're providing to families. So our roles are, as everybody said today, just so central and so crucial in terms of working very closely within as a partnership and in support of the Safeguarding Children Partnership. Okay, if we can move on to the next slide, please. So the development and structure of the group's existed in excess of 10 years as well. We've had a very long-standing chair who chaired for the majority of those years and was instrumental in the implementation of the group. That chair has recently moved on and stepped down from the group. So we really had to think about the onward sustainability of the group, and we've updated our terms of reference accordingly because we're really keen into the future for the chair. I'm currently within the role of chair and Anna within the role of vice chair. but to serve a term of 3 years and then to enable and empower other group members to take on these roles and to be able to take on roles within other important task and finish groups that arise. It's a great development opportunity, but we very much into the future don't want this to sit within one agency. We want different agencies to host this as chair and vice chair for a term, and then to move on to another group, and in that way for the group to be sustainable into the future, because it holds such a very important role when we're talking about safeguarding children and young people. If we can move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so this slide is an overview of the responsibilities and remit of the group. So Anna's already spoken about some of these areas, such as safeguarding and recruitment, and Liz has spoken about safeguarding training and so on. In terms of the group itself, the chair and vice chair attend Safeguarding Children Partnership meetings, which are also quarterly, and then additional meetings as and when needed. We sit on task and finish groups as well. So in that way, we can ensure that there's a representative from the voluntary and community sector. So just by way as an example of that, I sat recently on the safeguarding thresholds document update task and finish group. So I was able to read through that document thoroughly and ensure that somebody was looking at it from a voluntary and community perspective. And also the chair of the group attends planning and delivery group meetings. And at those meetings, the chair passes on any critical messages or recommendations. So just as an example of a critical message, at the last meeting, it was quite apparent from those who were present that there was a much greater awareness of agencies who provided support with domestic abuse within the city, and there seemed to be more confusion and uncertainty in terms of what was out there, thinking about the county in Rutland. So we fed that back, and that feeds into a bigger piece of promotion work that was already taking place. So what we were experiencing aligned actually with what other partners had experienced. And then we fed in suggestions such as that the voice of the disabled child is heard and acknowledged within the business plan. We queried if volunteers at COVID-19 vaccination centres had had adequate safeguarding training. So it's great to have a clear channel of communication where we can voice any queries, questions, concerns or recommendations. So if we move on to the next slide. Okay, so this is an opportunity for those who are in attendance today just to put forward your thoughts. So we're really keen to hear in the chat box what some of your experiences are, and what we're going to do with this information is we're going to either feed it into the planned sessions for the Festival of Learning, or if there is an opportunity to do that, then at the end of the activity, Liz will talk about the training that's already in existence. If there's any gaps beyond that, then we'll ensure that within the subgroups and within the training offer that is picked up somewhere, and that we raise that going forward, and we ensure that we overcome that gap or that challenge or barrier. We do our best to put in place some additional measures to achieve that. So I'm going to ask you to think about two things within the chat box. So just on an individual level, just to see if anything springs to mind. But as a voluntary and community sector practitioner or volunteer from an agency in attendance today, or you might be from the private sector or the statutory sector, but from your perspective, are there any challenges or barriers or concerns when you think about working within or working with the voluntary and community sector? So we've already raised one today in terms of the sector is vast, and that is a challenge in itself, trying to get the right information to the right person who really needs it in order to most effectively safeguard children and young people. That is a huge challenge in its own right. So if people want to just open up the chat box, and if there's anything that you can think of, it'd be great to see if there's anything coming through in terms of challenges, barriers, concerns, and feel free to say it as it is if you feel that communication could be improved with statutory partners or whatever the situation may be. It's just a great opportunity to pop that in there. Do you feel connected? If you are a voluntary and community sector group, do you feel that you're connected to the partners you need to connect to, that partnership work is as strong as it could be? We're all working remotely, so again, that's another challenge that we're all faced regardless of what sector we're from. So going forward, I should think it's going to be a much more blended approach to work. Is this working for us? Does it serve us well, or are there any concerns around that? Okay, so I can't see anything coming through on the chat as of yet, so I'm just going to carry on talking. So the other part 2 of the question is areas of interest. So is there anything that you would like to see in terms of future training or anything that we pick up on within the Festival of Learning? Any presenting issues for your agency at the moment, or any gaps in your own knowledge? And again, it's a great opportunity, I think, within these sessions. Nobody knows everything about safeguarding, and that's what the Safeguarding Children Partnership website is there. That's your one-stop shop to go to, and that's what the procedures on that website are for. So over and above that, you know, we can all go to that website, but I think it's really important we go to these training sessions because it flags up what our gaps actually are, and then we can go to that website and develop our own knowledge around some of those gaps. Okay, brilliant. So I've got a few things coming in on the chat. So James is saying, from my experience with roles in voluntary organisations, it can be difficult to find and maintain expertise and resources to connect in small community organisations. Okay, so do you want to say a little bit more about that, James?
Yeah, I can do. I've been involved in, I'm involved in a number of small voluntary organisations, and as Safeguarding Children Partnership Manager, I have quite a bit of expertise and things to bring into that. But I think looking at prior to that and looking at other small organisations in similar situation, I think that can be really hard where you're talking about one or no members of paid staff. I think it can be really difficult to make that time to keep up to date on expertise and these and maintain some of those contacts with other organisations.
Definitely, and I think it's ensuring that you've got the key things in place to begin with. So is there a designated safeguarding lead? And if it's a startup voluntary and community sector organisation, these things need to be there in place from the beginning. Have you got a policy in place in terms of a safeguarding policy and procedure for children and young people, and a separate one for adults if you need to have that in place as well, depending on the group that you're working in? Have you got a policy in place in terms of safer recruitment? Or have you got a framework in place to be supportive of staff and volunteers, continual improvement and training, and that you're really well versed in where to go and where to find those opportunities yourself and to attend relevant training and sessions such as this? So it's that real infrastructure and framework that supports all voluntary and community sector organisations, and larger organisations as well. As James said, are we up to date? Because perhaps sometimes we do it and then things just get put to one side, but obviously we should have in place that annual review of our policies and procedures, as well as updating them every time something arises, every time we're aware that we need something in there on modern slavery or child criminal exploitation, as our understanding develops holistically across sectors. So my own session later in the week, that's Wednesday 2 till 5 o'clock, addresses some of that. And I'm going to talk within that section of the importance of having a toolkit. So we all need a toolkit, whatever that is for us, and it's going to be different and unique for every organisation. But for smaller organisations, I'll drop the link in the chat in today's session after I finish speaking. But the NSPCC do a assessment, which I went on to have a go at myself just to understand it for delivering my own session. It took me 10 minutes, and it was just a case of ticking everything that we had in place at the Bridge East Midlands, just to ensure that we were doing everything that we could, and we had our infrastructure and our expertise was where it should be, basically. That's great. Thank you for that, James. So Sue, as a faith-based organisation, which is community-based and grassroots, my major issue is that when I report anything in, finding out how things are progressing with issues is really hard work. I do all the running and people don't often come back to me. Thank you for that, Sue. I think that's something that comes up again and again, and it's important that we raise it. And it's not about being critical to any one agency. We all know that we're pushed to the max sometimes in terms of capacity and so on. And I'll hand over to James to speak a little bit about this in a moment. From our perspective at the Bridge, as a voluntary and community sector organisation, a local charity based in Loughborough, within our policy and procedures, it's very much within there that if we don't hear something back, we follow that up, and we have a safeguarding concerns form at the Bridge. So the member of staff comes to us with the concern, and they ultimately deal with that safeguarding concern, prioritise what they need to do, but then they complete this form as close to 24 hours as they can, and that's then logged on a management log, and we want to see it through to the outcome. What was the conclusion? What was the overall outcome? Because sometimes agencies can put in a referral and they feel like their job is done. And in an ideal world, someone from social care would get back to you very promptly, but obviously their phones are off the hook all day and they're going out to do assessments and they've got emails coming in. So, and they would very much want you to phone back to check in as to where that referral is at. And we need to do that to update our own records as well, and to ensure that we're not missing any information and that it's all joined up. So do you want to say anything on the side of the statutory organisation and their response, James, in terms of children and young people's social care when they get a referral in from the voluntary and community sector?
Thanks, Claire. I guess I'd probably not go into processes and things like that, but I guess as well, so particularly for this session, I think it's really helpful to be highlighting things like that, Sue, and picking things like that up, and helping us as a partnership understand what works. I mean, we know that good communication is essential for safeguarding children across all organisations, and we've got this approach, and I know it can be difficult, particularly when you're quite a small organisation, to be, if you feel you've got to kind of keep a track of that and that sort of thing. So I think that's it's good to have that raised and be aware of that, and so we can look at continue to kind of look at how we're working and how we're working together and take that forward. But certainly I think it's important for organisations to know where they're at and what they can continue to contribute or not contribute. So I think, as Claire's outlined, it is really helpful to have that process that encourages you to follow those things up. But I do appreciate that's difficult for small organisations.
That's great. Thank you, James, and thank you both for the contributions. Is there anyone who would like to add anything, any additional comments, either in the chat or verbally, who hasn't already spoken in regard to any challenges, barriers or concerns they face, or any areas of interest or anything they'd like to see on future training programmes. Just a final opportunity if anyone wants to add anything. Okay, I've got something from Tracy. Thank you, Tracy. So Tracy says she hears this a lot in the designated safeguarding lead sessions I deliver, and we look at the escalation process and supervision and support. It's also a good opportunity to hear from others and their approaches. Okay, great. So flagging up the escalation procedure, I can pop that in the chat again when I finish speaking. The sessions across the Festival of Learning will provide lots of opportunity for meeting those from different agencies, and there are information sessions such as today, but we very much all learn from each other, so there'll be some opportunities for much more interactive learning as well as we go along the fortnight. And supervision is absolutely central to everything that we do linked to safeguarding children and young people, so a great point to make as well. Is there anything I've not picked up on, Tracy, within your comments, or is that okay in terms of how I've interpreted that?
Yeah, that's lovely, thanks. And just be really nice to see some people at my training.
Brilliant. We look forward to that, Tracy. Thank you very much. Anybody else want to add anything? Okay, great. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so just following that fantastic explanation of the role of the VCS reference group, I just want to round that off with a quick slide, just talking to you about how you can be more of a part of the VCS reference group. So go ahead and provide us with the contact details of your safeguarding lead, as Claire mentioned. We want you to provide us with feedback on any training arrangements that are offered, the content, the topics, any actions and information towards priorities that James referenced earlier, and help us obviously identify those hidden needs. You know, tell us about them so that we can escalate those to the planning and delivery group and up to the safeguarding board. Become a member of our reference group, or if you don't have the time and you're not able to commit that, that's fine. Let us know that you're interested and we can make sure that we link you in with a member so that they can keep you updated and contact you on a regular basis. And as Claire mentioned earlier, see our safeguarding briefings. There's the link there. We update them on a very regular basis, and if you've got anything that you want to contribute to those, also send that through. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna, and thank you, Claire, as well. I think I guess I just want to add and say as well. I think as Anna's pointed out, we will take all feedback from the sessions and the feedback you're putting in the chat and take these things up. And I think kind of escalating some of these concerns and bringing together the feedback we're hearing. I think that certainly we found the feedback from the voluntary and community sector reference group over the past year is really valuable to the partnership to help us understand how we work and how we shape that working. And as we've outlined throughout this, I think that kind of reach of the voluntary and community sector and the relationship of the voluntary and community sector with people means that working well, voluntary community sector working well to safeguard children is so important, but also working well with public sector, private sector, voluntary sector together is really important. Part of that is that communication, understanding how things are working and how things aren't. So certainly that the thing you mentioned of kind of sorry, the thing's been mentioned around kind of constantly chasing, that's something that we will kind of take on board and look at and consider and take that forward. So thanks for that feedback as well there. I certainly know that as a partnership, we value the work of the Voluntary and Community Sector Reference Group over the past couple of years, influencing safeguarding development, ensuring that at least a voluntary and community sector view. I know the few agencies we have can't represent the whole entirety of the sector, but having some view from the voluntary community sector is really important into the partnership. And they've also done work to assess safeguarding practice within the sector and develop report resources to support the sector. So that is really valuable. And I know that members of the partnership have gained really the valued kind of information they've gained through the process and involvement in being part of that reference group, and the information they gain as part of that as well. To round off this session, we also just want to introduce some key areas of focus in safeguarding children. And working together to safeguard children, and so we've referenced the partnership's kind of priorities, and we'll look at those in a moment. But the first key thing really in safeguarding children, the essential part of safeguarding children, is what we call the voice of the child, or the lived experience of children. Hearing the voice of children, understanding their lived experience, what their lives are like when we're working with them, when they're communicating with us, and what that means for how we work with them. And last year, the safeguarding partnerships with our colleagues in the NHS and some community organisations as well put together this Was Not Heard video, which really speaks about the importance of hearing the voice of children, understanding their experience, but also helps is really made in a way by children and young people to help those working with children and young people to reflect on how they hear and how they respond to what children and young people may be communicating to them. And so we thought it was really important in this opening session to share this video as well. So we are going to watch that now. It may be something you've heard before or seen before, but
Article 12 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child states, "I have the right to be listened to and taken seriously."
Listening is not just hearing, but also understanding what someone is saying.
When I cry, I'm talking to you.
When I fall silent, I'm talking to you.
When I'm naughty, I'm talking to you.
When I don't do my homework, I'm talking to you.
When I laugh, I'm talking to you. But are you listening?
It's your legal responsibility to listen to me so that my voice matters. It gives me a chance to express what I'm thinking and how I feel.
But it's not just your job to listen and to act on what you hear. It's my right to be heard, and it's also your job to explain that to me.
What's stopping you from listening is the excuses that you're too busy. It's the idea that my voice holds less validity than yours, because you're the adult. It's not my fault if listening to me and working with me to help me understand what's happening slows things down for you.
The consequences of not listening are not just causing me to lose confidence in my own voice. Not listening leaves me vulnerable.
I might hurt myself or run away because I'm scared.
What if I get into danger because you didn't take time to listen to something that you should have?
I listen to others to show that as one person to another, they have my respect and that I care about what they have to say.
I believe that the best way to be listened to is to listen to other people.
When I'm not listened to, it makes me feel insignificant.
It gives me the impression that my voice doesn't matter and that I have no role to play in the future of my own life.
Give me time to open up and share with you.
Sometimes my voice needs influence. Help me with this.
When you find new ways to hear, you hear new things.
Give me an opportunity to share my voice with others, and when I can't, share my voice for me.
If I can't talk or choose not to, then you legally become my advocate.
Listening to other people opens up my perspective.
Regardless of whether we agree or disagree.
I feel like I've helped them to know what they say counts.
When I feel listened to, I feel respected and I feel cared for.
It helps me to trust you with what I say and helps us work together.
Show respect for each other, create a safe space to talk, and listen where you and I feel equal.
I may be young, but we can stand shoulder to shoulder.
Ask me what I want. I need your support and someone to help me fight my corner.
Tell me what your decision will be before you go ahead with it.
Explain how this affects my life and tell me how the things I've shared helped you make this decision.
Don't keep secrets from me. It's my life you're talking about. I might not understand everything yet, but I'm the one living it.
You may have seen that video before, you may not, but I find every time I watch it, it's a really helpful opportunity for me to reflect on how I'm listening and listening to children and young people I work with and understanding them in the work of the partnership and in other settings. And so I think really important to I think to be aware of that and thinking in everything we do, how are we really understanding what children and young people might be saying to us? How do we do that within our work, but how do we do that within our organizational structure maybe as well? How do we ensure our organizational structure supports that to happen as well? And we kind of mentioned I think supervision, and where I think it's really important that people who are working with children and young people have an opportunity to speak to someone else about that, even in the smallest voluntary sector organisation, opportunity to speak to someone else about what they're seeing and reflect on that and how they're hearing and understanding the voice of children they're working with as well. So that is really I think the key essential part of safeguarding that we put through everything we do and to everything we do as a partnership. We have as well some specific priorities for the this year coming up. Hang on, let me just sort out the slides. Cool. So we have some specific priorities as the Safeguarding Children Partnerships for this current year that we're working in. We developed this from speaking and listening to children and young people, from what organisations working with children and young people have heard from them, and looking at some of the things that have been emerging from some of the learning work, the review work that we talked about earlier and what they are. So we've got these 5 areas that we're particularly working on. The first one is around safeguarding babies. I think a number of changes in services for babies during the pandemic particularly has influenced that, and some reviews we've carried out, and so there's some particular work going around the ICON project, which I should have checked, but I think is part of this Festival of Learning. Some sessions on that as part of the Festival of Learning, which is all about focusing on, thank you Liz and Anna, confirming that, is all about thinking about crying babies and coping strategies for working with crying babies as a key part of supporting babies and children's welfare and safety, and bringing in other messages as well. And then we'll be doing work around other messages around safe sleeping and other work with babies to safeguard them. So that's some of the work we're doing around there, really encouraging people to reflect and providing resources to support people to work with families with babies and work with babies. Second priority is mental health and safeguarding, a particular priority that's come from children and young people, and some research we did during the pandemic. And so we're continuing to explore how well we work around mental health and safeguarding children and young people, how services work and how we work together, and how we understand those issues and work around mental health, and how we work with children and young people on that. Third priority is around domestic abuse, and again we're doing some work to assess how our services work and how people work around where children and young people have been affected by domestic abuse, to support them and support their safety. Fourth priority is harm outside the home, which is really looking at a variety of things, such as child criminal exploitation, child sexual exploitation, and other areas, gangs as well, and other areas relating to particularly the safety of adolescents. And so we've been the work we're doing is really working out the approach, and sorting out the approach we have locally around that, how we work with that, and affecting really on how we keep adolescents safe, and working with adolescents to help keep them safe. And then a fifth one is safeguarding children from diverse backgrounds. So again, really assessing and looking to hear from children and families as well as to how well we work when we have children from different backgrounds, and from diverse backgrounds. So they're the particular areas of priority this year, with that hearing and understanding the voice of the children, working all the way through that, and also understanding how we've worked in the pandemic situation and the things we can learn from that, as well as a key element as part of that work. And we'll have there's a number of sessions throughout the Festival of Learning that relate to those priorities. So I'm going to hand back to Liz now to finish off the session, I think.
And you nearly had to say you're on mute then. Okay, thanks, James. So I thank you for attending. I think the session has helped to encapsulate what we're hoping for from this festival. And I did see that a colleague had put, James Fruin had said that, it's really useful because sometimes it's hard to keep up with safeguarding or what's happening out there, and this is a good way to sort of perhaps dip in and out of different sessions. So, I'm really hoping that that is what people do, that they join what they can. They perhaps pick up on some of the recordings if we're able to afterwards, or they say, Liz, I couldn't attend this. Liz or Daria or any of us here today, Claire and Anna as well in their roles for the VCS reference group, we couldn't attend this. Is there any chance of us doing this a different way, getting this for our agency? Because we're very flexible in how we can provide training and want to provide training for different people. And, I'd rather somebody came to me and said, you missed this out and we really need it, and then we can look at how we kind of fill that gap. As Claire was saying, what there must be some sort of things that, especially through the weeks, maybe that you think, oh, it would have been nice if we'd have had that, or actually it would have been nice if that expanded and there was a little bit more of that. So that's really what we need to know. And like I said, there'll be evaluation all the way through, and there'll be a closing session at the end. But we welcome any sort of feedback that you can give throughout the 2 weeks, because you never know, we might do it again. Oh, that's probably a bit too early in the day to be saying that. Yeah, I've seen Terry's face there. Oh no, don't make me do this again. Okay, right. So unless there's any comments, anybody wants to say anything, there's any feedback now, there's something that you want to ask, quite happy to close this session. I'm delivering an overview of the multi-agency referral form at 11:30 today. There are more in-depth sessions on the multi-agency referral forms, which are called Working Together to Achieve an Effective Referral, and we're putting some of those into the programme moving forward. As James said, there's 2 icon sessions, so talking about that icon approach, that's another new approach which I failed to mention at the outset of this session, so that's in there. And then at 1:30 we're playing the Adverse Childhood Experiences Resilience film for people to watch, and sort of adverse childhood experiences or any childhood trauma underpin the work that we're doing, you know, and what the research has sort of told us around this area, and also attachment, is that if we can work with children and families and young people when situations first arise. So that might not mean as a baby, that might mean, you know, at 14 a situation arises, something, and if we can get in early, that's what early help means, then that's how we can mitigate some of the impact of what's happening in their lives and support them to move forward and progress. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you so much to my colleagues, to James, to Claire and to Anna, because again, that's what this festival is about. It's about people who are working in that arena, who are working on that front line in that particular agency, telling you what it's like, rather than me telling you, because I don't work in those arenas. So thank you very much. I hope we see you if not in the next session, but in other sessions throughout the fortnight, and enjoy the rest of your day. It's a very good day to attend training because it's quite miserable outside, so come and learn. Okay, thank you very much. Daria, I'm not sure that the Was Not Heard link went in, to be honest. The film link.